If you've ever spent hours, maybe even days, wrestling with cloud configurations just to get a new application stood up, you know exactly how frustrating that can be. Well, today, we're going to show you a much smoother path. We're going to walk through deploying the CerbiShield platform completely from scratch using its guided infrastructure wizard. So, let's get started. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about the deployment headaches this wizard is designed to solve. Then, we'll cover the prep work, what you need to have ready before you even start. After that, we'll dive right into the wizard's flow, see what Azure resources actually get created, and then we'll wrap up with some pro tips to help you avoid those common pitfalls that can trip up just about anyone. Okay, so before we jump into the how, let's take a second to talk about the why. Why not just run a bunch of manual commands yourself? The answer is pretty simple. It's all about taming that complexity and making absolutely sure that your dev environment looks exactly like your production one. Yeah, if you're an IT admin, you know this question is, well, it's a little too real, isn't it? Deploying these complex multi-service applications in the cloud is rarely a simple click next kind of deal. You've got dozens of moving parts, and just one tiny mistake early on can cause some massive headaches down the road. And here are the usual suspects, right? You're dealing with incredibly complex cloud configs. You're hitting these hidden service quotas you didn't even know existed, and you're fighting environment drift. That's that dreaded scenario where something works perfectly in dev, but just completely breaks in prod. The CerbiShield wizard was built from the ground up to automate these steps and get rid of these exact problems. All right, let's get you ready for a really smooth deployment. The key to success is all in the preparation. While the wizard is going to do all the heavy lifting, it does need a few key pieces of information from you to get everything started. Think of this slide as your pre-flight checklist. These are the 6 key inputs the wizard is going to ask for. Having your Azure subscription ID, the name for your resource group, the region you're deploying to, and your Azure container registry, that's where your app images live, all ready to go will make this whole process just fly by. You'll also need some security details for your JWT, which handles authentication, and of course, the specific image tag you want to deploy. And hey, don't worry about memorizing every single little configuration setting. For a lot of the parameters, the wizard is actually smart enough to use some really sensible defaults. This makes things a whole lot simpler for a standard deployment, but still gives you that fine-grained control when you really need it. Okay, with all our inputs gathered, it's time to take a look at the wizard itself. This is really the core engine that's going to turn your inputs into a fully provisioned Azure environment. So what is this wizard really? Well, under the hood, it's a really smart PowerShell script called setup.ps1. You can think of it like an expert assistant. First, it checks your environment, then it asks for all the necessary inputs, and then it generates a special parameter file. That file is then used by Azure Bicep, which is Microsoft's language for defining cloud infrastructure, to build everything out perfectly, every single time. And you've actually got 2 ways to run it. For all you developers out there, or if you're trying to integrate this into an automated pipeline, running the PowerShell script right from the console is definitely the way to go. But if you're an operator who prefers a graphical interface, or maybe you're just doing a one-time setup, the Azure Portal option gives you a really simple click-through experience. And here's the basic flow of how it works. It all starts with pre-flight checks to make sure you're logged in and you have the right permissions. Then it collects and validates your inputs, confirms the naming plan with you, and asks how you want to provision the resources. Finally, it generates the parameters and kicks off the deployment. It's just a really clean, logical progression from start to finish. So, after the wizard works its magic and everything is finished, what do you actually end up with? Let's take a quick look at the Azure resources that form the foundation of the CerbiShield platform. What's really cool is that the wizard provisions a full production-grade environment. It uses Azure Container Apps for scalable serverless compute, Service Bus for super reliable messaging, Postgres SQL for your database, Key Vault for keeping your secrets safe, and that powerful combination of log analytics and app insights for monitoring. It's literally everything you need, all provisioned in one shot. But honestly, the most valuable thing that comes out of the wizard is this bicep parameter file. This isn't just some log file, it's the actual blueprint of your entire environment. With this one file, you can tear down and perfectly recreate your infrastructure at any time. This is the absolute key to having repeatable deployments and a rock-solid audit trail. All right, now for a really critical section that could save you a ton of time and frustration later. You see, even with a perfect wizard, you can still run into the limits of the Azure platform itself. Let's talk about the most common one. Oh man, it's such a frustratingly vague error, isn't it? You have enough CPU quota, you're pretty sure your subscription is fine, So what gives? A lot of the time, the reason is actually hiding in your resource group's deployment history. And the answer is often found right here in Microsoft's official documentation. Just take a look at that very first line. Azure keeps a history of every single deployment you make to a resource group, and it turns out there's a hard limit on how big that history can get. And that limit is 800. Every single time you deploy to that resource group, even for a tiny, insignificant change, it adds 1 to the count. If you have an active CI/CD pipeline running, you can burn through those 800 slots way faster than you might think. And then, all of a sudden, all your deployments will start failing with that mysterious quota exceeded error. Thankfully, the fix is super straightforward, as you can see here in the official docs. You just need to clear out the old, unneeded entries from the deployment history. It's a really quick cleanup task that won't touch any of your live resources, but it will immediately unblock your pipeline. Of course, there are a few other potential snags to be aware of. You might hit regional vCPU quotas, or maybe try to recreate a key vault that's still in a soft deleted state. Or you could pick a globally unique name for a container registry that's already taken. It's always a good idea to check these things if you run into trouble. But by understanding the process, preparing your inputs, and knowing these common pitfalls ahead of time, you are absolutely ready to deploy CerbiShield with total confidence. So the only real question left is, where are you going to start? Are you going to spin up a dev environment to experiment with, a test environment for validation, or are you ready to go straight for production? The choice is yours.